Hello world of YouTube and welcome to the listening log update for November of 2019. I have 17 albums to get through this month, which sounds like a lot, and I understand if you want to go to a specific album with the timecodes linked in the description. But I'm doing catch-up for the year, so I've got older records that I've missed, new records that have come out to break up the monotony of the older stuff, and requests on the docket as well. I feel like I've got a good balance of those three, but let's go ahead and dive the fuck in.
About to catch a rush, looking perplexed as fuck. Some of you would prefer I kept.
So I was kind of excited for this project. I had heard some of the EPs that had tracks that ended up on here. This kind of had the same structure that TDT, the Big Crit compilation, but I think there's more songs here that weren't on the EPs. And it is the first solo album from Ubi on Strange Music. He had that Mad Adult Money mixtape back when they first got signed to Strange, but I like Cess Crew. I think Cess Crew are one of the best acts Tech has signed to Strange Music. Like, I think they are the best act that isn't from the original crop of, like, Cut Calhoun, Chris Calico, and Scatterman and Snug Rim, but I think they're even better than, like, Cut and Scatterman. I love the chemistry between Gotti and Ubi. And I think even on Mad Adult Money, Ubi shined really well and showcased his proficiency as a rapper. While I like this project, I think it has some of the same follies as your typical Strange Music project. I think it's a little lengthy. I think it's a little bloated. I think some of the tracks could do with a little more zhuzhing up, you know, maybe a feature, maybe a different type of beat in the mix. Because, like, Ubi is the best part about this. His verses are great. His wordplay is awesome. I love the hooks on tracks like Read 'Em and Weep, and even though I'm not the biggest fan of Good Guy, like the song itself, I like the hook of it. I love the opener Game Show. I think the wordplay on that is like peak Ubi firing on all cylinders. Like, I love the consistent usage of Ubi and I think it's a really fun way to craft a verse, and I think that he knocked it out of the park there. I love the track What If. I think it's a fun song that has just a really bonkers idea behind it. Personally, I think the middle section of the record is where it starts to get a little monotonous. The songs don't necessarily flow together, but I feel like I said, if you were to add another feature, someone else for Ubi to play off of, or something to break up Ubi's flow, because while I think his flow is tight, he gets deep in the cut, because of the beats he's spitting on here, he doesn't get to flex his, you know, versatility as a rapper, as a rhymer. His flow kind of bends in similar lanes throughout the entire project, and I feel like it kind of weighs down the experience a little bit, you know, because, again, his pen game is fucking strong. He has a great voice, and he's really good at utilizing an instrumental, and a lot of the early Cess Crew projects and some of the ones they've dropped on Strange really showcase that, but this project just has that kind of solo outing fatigue that I wasn't expecting to get because I liked Mad Adult Money, and I've liked his contributions within Cess Crew, both solo, on an album, or otherwise. I wanted a little something else to zhuzh up the track listing a little bit. Again, it's a solid record. If you like Cess Crew, you'll probably walk away liking a lot of this project, and that's the parts that I like as well. But I just wanted something a little less, something else to spice it up. I'm feeling a 7 on this. I think it's a really good record. I think it's a strong outing. I think that by the end of the track listing, I was feeling just glad that something else was happening. There was a little more variety in the tracks by the end of the album. But it's a fun listen. At least give it a spin. If you like Cess Crew, if you like hardcore Midwest hip hop, you'll probably like Under Bad Influence if you didn't check out the EPs. But I also didn't like the pre-marketing strategy for this of releasing the album in bits. I just didn't think it worked, and it kind of spoiled some of the better moments within this track listing.
Hate the silence. That's why the music's always loud. So many.
Charli XCX is an artist that I've enjoyed. I think she's got a really distinct voice in the pop world. I think she's really loud and raucous and sticks out in the crowd amongst your Carly Rae Jepsons, your Taylor Swifts, or even your pop-centric bands like Everything Everything. I think her voice is kind of the place the world was wanting to go to after LaRue came onto the scene. Not to compare them both pretty directly, but they do have very similar strengths to their voices. But I'm glad that after Charli kind of had this massive success, she kind of diverged off into another realm of pop. And on Charli, she seemingly completely dives into the worlds of bubblegum bass and electro pop in a way that are very far removed from where the current kind of radio pop landscape is. but I love it for that. I adore the synthetic textures on this thing. I love the atmosphere on a lot of this. I love the features on here. I think that the features that she chose suit this album very, very well. I love the track with Haim. I think that they suit Charli's voice incredibly well, and they ride the instrumental that's crafted for them wonderfully there. I think the track with Lizzo's a lot of fun. I'm glad Cupcake gets a feature on here, and it's on this like almost pop posse cut on Shake It. The song is so much fucking fun. And I think that Charli does a good job at making this sort of left-of-center pop album without losing a lot of the pop sensibilities. There are aspects of this that remind me of the Sophie album that came out last year with how abstract it gets in structure or in composition, but I think that at its core, it stays a pop album. You know, for every Thoughts and Click, there's a 1999 or a White Mercedes right around the corner to bring you back in to the realms of catchy hooks, really infectious bass lines, and danceable grooves. This album strikes a perfect balance between the abstract and the pop in a way that I wasn't expecting her to take. I hadn't really checked her PC music influenced stuff, but if this is what it sounds like, this is miles better than what she was doing before. Again, not that I hated her boom claps or her features on I Love It or anything like that, but I feel like this also suits her voice very, very well. And I think this is an incredible fucking record. One of my favorite pop albums of the year, and it's gonna be on my list somewhere. Not super high, but in the mids. It's really fucking good. I'm giving this an 8 out of 10. If you haven't checked this out and you want a really nice pop record with a lot of, you know, bubblegum influence, but in a very different kind of way, you'll like this album. It's really good. I'm so scared. On the other side of the coin of that, I checked out Weyes Blood's Titanic Rising, and holy shit. This is an album that I've been excited to check out because it was very critically praised, but it wasn't without its detractors, people that felt it didn't click with them. And I was wondering where I would sit in that, you know, critical realm, and I definitely am vibing with this record. I'm jiving with this record, full stop. This is like Charli XCX's album, has a lot going on, but I feel like in the same vein, it excels in where it takes its sound without going far out of its boundaries of what its foundation is. You know, this album is very lush, it's very grand in scope, it's very ethereal, and her voice soars and dances around all of these ideas masterfully. You know, I love the smooth opener of A Lot's Gonna Change, and think it bleeds really well into Andromeda, both having really Baroque sounding instrumentals, but Andromeda has this impeccable build up to its phenomenal chorus. Andromeda is one of my favorite cuts of the year, and it has surprises in this mix, because after the first couple of tracks and Every Day and Something to Believe, not really changing too much from the sound, you know, they add some drums, they add some tighter percussion, but it stays within its realm. It completely surprised me with its almost shoegazy dream pop title track that just has this sound that washes over you in this wave of comfort. And I love the sounds in that song. And I was surprised again with Movies. I loved the kind of synth lines that really kind of change up the pace a little bit and add a little bit more urgency to the track listing at the perfect time. Because while the record has kind of stayed in this realm, the title track really waves and pulls it into a more slower place, a more atmospheric place before kind of introducing some life back in the track listing. This album is paced perfectly. I love the fact that while it is a more, again, experimental in structure and style record, it's a very indie record. It's something for the indie crowd. This is what I was hoping for when I had seen this be such a critical darling. You know, I love her voice. Again, it kind of dances and soars over these different styles under the same umbrella masterfully. I think that she knows when to pull back and knows when to explode over a really nice hook. You know, this is an amazing record. One of the best of the year, hands down. It's what I needed, and it's perfect for this time of year. As we get colder and colder and bury ourselves in the snow, this is an album you should check out. It's really good. Even though it's got this lush sound, there's a sense of warmth to it that I really enjoy. and has kept me coming back for more. I'm giving this a 9. It'll be somewhere high on my of the year list. This is just an impeccable record that I am very glad that I spent time with this year. So well done. So very well done. I was kind of afraid to check out this album because Yelawolf dropped what I would argue is his weakest project of his career, or one of his weakest, with Trunk Music 3. It's an album that, as the years gone on, I've just grown a more bitter taste to, and I felt like with this album he was just going to be stumbling out of the gate with something to just kind of say, hey, I may be off shady, but I'm not done. And I don't think it's completely that. I feel like he could have sat with this a little bit, kind of stewed with some of the instrumentals a little more, and made some of them pop, because some of the tracks that I do like the kind of lead line on Opie Taylor, or the more rootsier sounding songs like Lightning or Renegades, I would have liked to have seen the instrumentals kind of pop a little more. They feel very different, and they feel a little more subdued, and I was also hoping for a little more of his rowdier side. It's here, but in a different potency than I was wanting. You know, when he gets rowdy, it's more on tracks like Unnatural Born Killer, where, you know, he just gets really angry. I was wanting something a little more just fun, like Donuts off of Ricky Bobby. You know, not necessarily a recreation of that, but I wanted that more kind of a livelier sound. You know, whenever he kind of brightens it up, he almost kind of pulls back the energy. And maybe it's just because of the production feels a little subdued on some of those tracks, but I was wanting a little more from the production on this record. I think Yelawolf shines, and I think this is a step in the right direction. You know, my favorite project of his is still Trunk Music Returns, and I feel like this is more in line with a lot of the ideas on that record. I think this is a fun album when it wants to be, and it's earnest, and it's heartfelt when it wants to be as well. It's a better Yelawolf project than we've gotten in a while. I wouldn't say it's still amazing. Again, there's production issues I have issues with, and I feel like he could have done a little more to work on some of his songwriting on some of the other tracks. I feel like the back half of the record is fine. I feel like he kind of plays a lot of his better cards first and kind of lets the album flounder out by the end a little bit. It's not as... I haven't been wanting to finish this album as much as I have wanting to start it. But it is something that's grown on me. When I first spun it, I was kind of indifferent to it, but I keep revisiting it, and it's sticking with me more. You know, I want to like Yelawolf records because I like his earlier mixtapes, and I like some of the tracks off of his stuff throughout the Shady records, but I wanted the stuff that I liked in a bigger potency here, and while I got it in a bigger potency than I got in the last couple of Shady records, it's still not quite what I'm wanting from a Yelawolf project. But I still dig this. I'm giving it a 6. I'd like to see more. I'd like to see this progressed more, but what's here is a nice genesis for him to build upon, I think, personally. Holy shit. From the depths of my soul, I can say that Caligula by Lingua Ignota is one of the strongest records like I've heard all year. You guys know I love industrial music. This is that already like piqued my interest when I saw this record getting buzz, but to see such attention paid to a love of classical arrangements and almost a sense of Greek theater on this album is what sets it above for me as like one of the best. This is bleak. It is harsh. It is cold. It is nihilistic. You can tell she is going through some shit. And it is not a comfortable album to sit through. You know, tracks like Do You Doubt Me, Traitor, where she's screaming, I don't eat, I don't sleep. She's basking in her sorrow. She's basking. It is a cathartic record. It is full of pain, and I love it. You know, I praised Author and Punisher for doing similar things on Beastland, but whereas that record stayed cold and mechanical, this also interpolates very classical sounding singing and music that I just I'm eating the fuck up. You know, the switch up from Days of Tears and Mourning, which has this very gothic intro that goes into these clashing mechanical noises, into Sorrow, 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 which is this soft, beautiful fucking song that is full, that is potent of emotion. It hits me right here. You know, I'm a big advocate for music as expression, music as therapy, music as growing, and this is a record like that. This is just, it is so good. And amidst all of the great moments on here, I gotta say, Butcher of the World might be one of my favorite songs of the decade. I'm a big fan of the Funeral March of Queen Mary. It's one of my favorite classical pieces, and to see it used and juxtaposed over these harsh, angry vocals and mechanical sounds, it just, oh my god, I get chills just thinking about it. This album evoked so much raw, potent emotion out of me listening to it. She channeled her feelings so purely on this release that I can't flack it. It is so good. I just want to give her a hug. I just feel bad because she clearly, this is a tough time for her, and I feel like she is making something out of it that is incredibly worthwhile, but fuck, this is some heavy shit. It is as big in scope as a Greek tragedy should be. This album is aptly named Caligula. If you are willing to sit through an hour and 6 minutes of pain and misery and just bleak nihilism, listen to this album. It is so good. It is so, so very good. One of the best albums of the year. 10 out of 10. I can't express enough how much I like this record. I don't listen to it as much as the other stuff I've checked out this month, but every time I've sat down with it, I am floored. It is perfect. You know, I was actually really excited for this record because while Anamanaguchi kind of strayed away from their chiptune beginnings, I think that it's poignant for them to kind of come back to it. And while I didn't know if they would, the minute I heard the title track USA, my heart just got filled with so much warmth because I've been following them post Endless Fantasy. I just haven't been all that delighted with what I've seen. I don't mind their dippings into PC music and stuff like that, and I feel like they do a good job at bridging that sound with their chiptune roots and to making something I think that is a little better than Endless Fantasy. My biggest issue with Endless Fantasy was while it was full of chiptune bops and the synth tones were so rich on there, it was a little bloated in some of the vocal performances, some of the vocal features just didn't do anything for me. And that's still kind of a problem on here to a smaller degree, the vocal issue. I'm not a big fan of tracks like Up to You and... I'm not a big fan of tracks like Up to You and Sunset by Plane. I think that the synth tones on there are really rich and still do a good job at sounding better, at melding the two worlds than what was on Endless Fantasy. But I think that they've also done a better job at introducing vocals into their sounds, like on tracks like BSX and other tracks like Lorem Ipsum and the CRT Woods, which kind of infuse this kind of vocoder digitized voice, which I think suits the band's sound a lot more. Also, I just liked how these songs are longer and have a little bit more going on, but don't feel directionless. I fucking love this record. I think the synth tones are really lush and crisp. The chiptune sounds on here are amazing, and I think that they've done a good job at bridging where their sound went eventually and brought it back and tied it together with the sounds that they started with to begin, or the sounds that they started with. I think that the sounds are super nice, super crisp. I love the drums on this. They have a lot of oomph and power behind them, and the band just shreds and creates some really nice grooves to dance to before letting things melt away on some of the tracks here. Like I said, not everything is perfect. I think some of the vocal guests just don't do a good job as others, but the band as a whole seems to be firing on more cylinders than they have in a long time, and I adore this record. I'm giving it an 8. It's really fun, really charming, and something that I could see myself coming back to more as a whole than I do Endless Fantasy, which I do cherry pick my favorite songs off of that project. I like it. Still less than Don Metropolis, but Don Metropolis is a modern classic IMO. I've been excited for this record. I've been following Doja Cat's sort of rise post-Moo pretty closely because I think she's an interesting voice in the scene right now. She has potential to be something different, and I feel like there's elements of that on here, but there's also elements of sort of treading kind of tropes in the genre of pop rap as well. Where I think this thing shines are on the very ambitious lyrically and conceptually Cybersex, the lead single Bottom Bitch. Well, not I guess the lead single because Juicy was also a song on here. But Bottom Bitch is an amazing song. I still really like Bottom Bitch. And I like Juicy. I think it's a fine enough song. I think Tyga's the weakest part of it. And I know that there's a verse that Doja recorded that they scrapped for Tyga's verse that they think is better. But I also really like some of the other songs on here, like Streets. I think Won't Bite is fine. I like Samino on it more than Doja, but it's got a nice atmosphere to it. But I feel like this album kind of falls apart in trying to be sort of Catchup for Doja for some reason. And I also think that there's a missing element on here, and that's its cohesion. You know, a lot of these songs, even the ones that I do like, don't sound like they're on the same record. They sound like this sounds like kind of a cobbled together mess that lacks a lot of focus. You know, I don't think this is the worst thing in the world. It's far from the worst album I've heard this year, but it is a lot more mediocre than I was wanting it to be. And I feel like Doja's shortcomings come from almost a lack of willing to commit to something different, because the parts where it falls apart are songs like Talk Dirty and her parts on Won't Bite. And Rules, where it sounds like it's derivative and it sounds very, again, trying to appeal to the pop masses without standing out in your own significant way. There's even a part on here where she actually straight up sounds like Nicki Minaj, and I was kind of shocked that it wasn't her, and I was not in a good way. I was wanting Doja to kind of stand out more on herself, because what made her stand out was, you know, songs like Tia Tamara, where she's having fun, but in her own way, or a track like Moo, where she's clearly just making a fun shitposty song, or even on Juicy, where she's making this kind of for the ladies song, or, you know, to love yourself, but it's in her own kind of way, and that there's a lack of identity on a lot of this, and it's upsetting to me. And that's why I'm giving it a 5. It's a 5 out of 10 record. It's very average. If it ends up on my worst of the year list, it's going to be near the bottom, and it's because out of all the records I heard this year, there haven't been too many that have been completely terrible. There have been some, but there have been a lot more mediocre records than there have been outright bad ones. I've been a Mika Kitty viewer for a long time. I've never really listened to a lot of her music. I never wrote it off as like, oh, a YouTuber making pop music, but when she dropped Crush last year, I was actually kind of intrigued. I thought the sounds on there were really charming, and I thought that her voice suited the sort of glitchy atmospheres that she was toying with. And on Bad Ideas, she does a good job at integrating that across a whole release, while spreading her wings a little bit more into some dancey, sort of more humanistic sounding songs like I Like the Idea of You, without losing a sense of heart in some of the lyrics and some of the performances. While I think Hot Pink felt a little directionless, this still has a little bit too much going on, and I don't like all of the trendy sounding songs, but it still has a little more of an umbrella of sound that it's trying to aim for. And I think Tessa knows her way around a hook, and she does a good job at sounding playful without losing a sense of emotion. And I like this a lot. It almost feels like, this is going to be a weird thing to compare it to, but it feels like a sort of indie twee version of like a Carly Rae Jepsen record. It feels less indebted to like 80s worship and more indebted to like internet glitch worship. It has moments where it's trying to sound trendy. That was my biggest issue with some of the aspects of Crush and Bad Ideas and Games, but I feel like those songs still have a sense of fun to them and a sense of youthful energy that I think works for this type of pop music. It's nothing that I would say blows my mind or is of the year material. But this was a fun record that I liked coming back to. And I think out of YouTubers trying to make music, this at least feels more indebted to Tessa's personality than I would say some of the other YouTubers making music that I've seen. This is definitely a really fun record. And there's some bops on here. Like, I like a lot of the hooks to a large degree. I think it's good. I'm giving this a 6. Still really solid, still worth your time. It's still a solid 6 out of 10. I feel like if you like really catchy pop music and you like good hooks, you would probably like this. I just would have liked to have seen a little more of a focus put to consistency across the whole project, and maybe more incorporations of glitch. I like the glitchier aspects of the instrumentals here, and I would have liked to have seen them kind of fleshed out more, or doubling down on some of the sounds from tracks like I Like the Idea of You, which I love the lyrics to that song, and I think that they tie into a lot of the themes of the record really well, and that's the one thing that kind of makes this record really lyrically cohesive as well, are the lyrics. But again, I just would have liked to have seen a little more focused on the instrumental front.
Mountains in the distance and how...
I mostly checked this out because my buddy Joe recently saw Bayside, and he was hyping up this record, and I liked it. I checked out these guys' last album that came out, or I think it was their last album, Vacancy. That's the only exposure to Bayside that I have. And I was pretty underwhelmed by that project. I thought it was kind of bland and tasteless, and didn't really have a whole lot in terms of memorability. But Interrobang is completely the opposite. I think the guitar playing on here is a lot flashier. The solo work on tracks like Bury Me and I think it's Medication are fantastic. The hook on Medication, also really, really good. And on the title track, the opener, Interrobang, while I don't like the production on a lot of this record, I do think it fits the style they're going for. This kind of dark, edgier style of pop punk. I do like the vocals on here as well. I think the vocalist and his harmonies really sell a lot of the more dramatic, emotive aspects of the record and the lyrics. The lyrics on here are very somber, a little more pessimistic and downtrodden. They talk about heartbreak and codependency and feeling emotionally numb. And the song writing and the instrumentation all kind of suits together really well. I think this is a really solid pop-punk record, one of the better ones I've checked out in recent memory. I think it's the biggest detractor is the production, where I feel like this could have benefited from the production scene on like a Morbid stuff. I feel like the guitars, while they have that kind of crunch I'm sure they were going for, it's just very kind of bland to me personally. That's totally a preference thing. I could see people who don't mind that kind of production liking this record more than I do, but I walk away thinking it's really solid, but I would have liked to have seen different production on it. I think that it is pretty consistent though from a playing standpoint, from a writing standpoint. I think the hooks for the most part are pretty catchy as well, and this is a really solid record. I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. Good stuff. I could see why you liked it, Joe.
In the days when niggas wore fades, suit tie caps, just trying.
You guys know I saw Rapsody when she opened up for Big Crit, and I had to check out Eve because, man, did she put on a great show, and man, is Eve a really good fucking record. I love this. I love the very old school style that coats a lot of this record. I love the soul aspect on cuts like Alaya and on Ibtihaj and on tracks like Maya. There's just a lot on here that has a nice ounce of soul and emotion to enhance Rhapsody's bars. I mean, she's got hashtag bars emojis, horns, air horns, you know what I'm saying? No. But no, this record is really earnest, really heartfelt. I like this record a lot. I think that she goes in on the cut. She's not afraid to get personal. She's not afraid to be bold with how she delivers lyrics. This clearly comes from a personal place. A lot of the lyrics on here are seemingly about, at least themed around her come up or the black excellence in general. I was getting a lot of similar vibes that I got with the Sons of Kemet record that came out last year, but in a more direct fashion because it's not coded in like abstract jazz nuance to act as a theme to the titles of the songs. The titles of the songs tie into the lyrics. That's about come up, her come up, black power, black empowerment in general, black women in general empowerment. It's a great message. A lot of great messages on here. I liked I like the sentiment on Alaya. I love almost the kind of flexing anthem of Serena. Like, she's not flexing, but she's using kind of the status and the power seen in someone like Serena Williams in a way to speak about, you know, boastfulness, and it's awesome. I like it. I like this album a lot. I also like a lot of the features on here as well. I love the track
Ibtihaj.
I love D'Angelo's hook on there. I love the Jizza on there as well. So good. Love to see him whenever I can. I like Queen Latifah on the track that she's on. And that whole song in general just feels like a really personal track for Rapsody because she references Queen Latifah pretty closely in the lyrics on there. Even Cole, he's got on the track he's on. Yeah, this is a really good record that I'm glad that I finally checked out, and I'm glad that I got exposure to Rapsody in a live setting because I think that she knocked it out of the park there and she knocked it out of the park here, and I really want to check out her back catalog because this left a good taste in my mouth by any end of it. I really, really like this thing. I think it's one of the stronger hip-hop records to drop this year. I think she's tight. I think she's dope. I think she's got a really good flow. She backed herself with some good instrumentals, and this gets a solid recommendation from me. I'm giving this an 8 out of 10. I'm loving the hell out of this thing.
And I'm done and never hear them say, oh honey, if you...
Everything I said about the last Bayside record, I pretty much feel about Surviving. I've spun this thing a couple of times, and nothing is sticking with me, man. Not to its discredit, the production's fine, everything kind of sticks, like everything has its pocket, everything's tight. I like, you know, a lot of the energy on here. I like the tones that Jimmy Eat World's working with, and this is going to be kind of a short review because, honestly, I mean, I know this is a request, Random Rock and Red Roast Reviews. You were wanting me to tackle this. I got nothing, man. Like, I think it's competent. It's competent pop punk. If you want to hear what Jimmy Eat World's working on in 2019, you might get some love out of this. I don't think it's the worst thing I've heard this year. It's just probably the most forgettable thing I've heard this year. I even spun this thing one more time before I sat down to edit to see if I was being maybe too harsh on it. And I really, I'm not. The production, it's competent. And even the tracks like 555 that try to tap into something that I feel like Blink-182 was doing on 9, it's just not, it doesn't do anything for me. If anything, those tracks are just as forgettable as their, attempts at trying to generate the same type of pop punk they were making before. Again, it's very inoffensive. It's trying. I can feel them trying to write a good hook or to write a solid riff, and it's not bad. It's just not great either, in my opinion. I've also never been the biggest Jimmy Eat World fan. I think that they've always been fine. But outside of their big singles, they've never been a band that I've wholly sought after, and that's probably a reason why walking away from this, I don't feel anything. I feel pretty neutral about this, so I'm going to give it a 5. I'm sorry if you wanted me to love this thing or to go nuts over some of the songs on here, but to be perfectly honest, there's been nothing on here that's been sticking with me after multiple listens. This will be the one cop-out out of these 17 albums, and it's the request, and I'm sorry, but that's all I got, man.
Caught up in these never-ending battle lines.
I was excited for the new Beck album. You guys know I love Beck. I'm a pretty avid Beck fan. And while I liked the first single to drop from this Saw Lightning, I liked the kind of melding of Beck's almost rootsier sounding guitars with Pharrell's percussion. I wasn't expecting the record to sound like this. This is a lot more dreary and atmospheric than I was expecting, and I'm going to be honest, this is probably one of Beck's weaker releases to me personally. If I were to rank this into discography, it probably would be above Golden Feelings, but below Stereopathic Soul Manure. Not to say that there's songs I don't like on here. I like Saw Lightning. I love the hook of Uneventful Days. and I like the track Star, and I think Sky Ferreira's vocals on Die Waiting are really nice, and Chemical's a pretty good jam. I could see someone like The Weeknd writing a beat like Chemical, but as a whole, this record was a little underwhelming. It felt like Beck writing the trends. It felt like the afterbirth of Colors, and while I liked Colors a lot, and I love the album cover of this album a lot, and I was hoping that it would be a lot better than it is, I would have loved to have seen them doubling down more on the atmospheric stuff with the trap stuff. Like, the stuff like that, while it sounds like two middle-aged dudes trying to channel Travis Scott, I think that's more interesting than some of the stuff we got on here. I think the instrumental on Everlasting Nothing builds to a really nice flourish that a lot of the record doesn't live up to. Yeah, this is pretty underwhelming. Again, my bias may seemingly play into my score because I'm giving it a 6, but it could have been a lot better. I was hoping for a lot more out of this project, and the idea of Beck continuing like extending into different aspects of trendier music fascinates me, but I just think that it kind of, and him working with Pharrell also fascinates me, but I think it kind of just stuttered and stalled out by the finish line, and it was a less than exciting experience for me personally.
Even more than last time. Hard to know if you're
I'm really excited for All Together, because ever since I got into Turnover a while ago, Hannah got me into Turnover a long while ago, before Good Nature, I've really enjoyed these guys leaning into the janglier sound, and on All Together they dive even further into that jangly atmosphere, but they even add a kind of touch of mid-80s, late 80s sophistopop through the eyes of like Everything But the Girl on here. Like, one of the songs on here has these bongo flourishments on it that I think really suits the atmosphere that they're going for. It's really smooth. It's really creamy. There's a sense of emotion. The emotional potency is felt here as well in a lot of the writing, and the jangly guitar production that they have on here suits a lot of the sounds that they're seemingly homaging to. It reminds me a lot of early Cure in a good way. I like a lot of the vocals on here. They don't necessarily remind me of the Cure. They remind me of like Turnover still, but it's in a very new way. While I liked the more vibrant sounds on Good Nature, I like that it's a little more cold on All Together. I almost wish that the sophistopop aspects were more infused, because on the intro, Still in Motion, there's like brass and stuff like that, which again, that kind of stuff crops up by the tail end of the record, but I would almost hope for more of that. I would love a doubling down on that sound, because I think it suits the band well. You know, I love the really bright, shimmery guitars on this, and I think that they suit that kind of bongo, brassy aesthetic really well, and I think that the writing that they're doing lends itself to that as well, especially the more somber aspects of it. I love a lot of the hook work on here as well. It's a very engaging record, and it's a fun listen. Had I listened to this earlier, I had this come out a couple months ago, I probably would have thrown this on like my Instagram albums for the fall collage that I've been starting to make for the seasons, because this is a perfect fall record. It's cold, but not cold enough to be winter, and its aspects in it give it this kind of retro contemporary edge that I don't see many people tapping into, that I really liked, and I would love to see more bands do, or at least them expand upon in a bigger sense, because it works for them a lot. You know, while Good Nature kind of expanded the seeds of Peripheral Vision in a softer edge, this continues that, but in a much better way. I'm giving this an 8. It's a great record. It's probably going to be on my 50 of the year somewhere. I'm not sure where, but this is one to not sleep on if you like jangly pop rock with a bit of a pop, like a 80s pop twist, alternative pop twist. This is a really delightful record. I liked it a lot. I'm torn with Juice B. Crypts, because while I like it, I definitely don't like it as much as Gloss Drop, and I feel like a lot of the aspects of this album that work aren't in heavy enough doses. I love the wonky loop nature on tracks like Ambulance and A Loop So Nice. I love the interpolation of hip hop on IZM, and I like a lot of the. I like the interlude Hero 3. It injects a lot more of their personality seen on those earlier records in this record, but this record falters and stumbles to the finish line. I don't like the title track all that much. It has elements that I enjoy, but I really hate Last Summer on Shasta Parts 1 and 2. I think that the tune yards and them do not really mesh well together, and it leaves the record with this taste that just, it sours the momentum the album was building towards. Because I like IZM and Hero 3. They're two of the strongest parts of the record to me. I like the Shabazz Palace's incorporation on that track. And I like a lot of where the album was carried up until that point. I kind of like the more subdued aspects of Sugarfoot. And I think that they suited a nice change of pace for the album and for this band. And I was hoping that this record would be a little more tight, a little more consistent. Where it shines, it's really good. Where it falters, it's glaring. And that's leaves me at an impasse. You know, I wanted to give this like a 7. I wanted to give this like a 7, like an 8. I really wanted to like this thing because I like Battles. And they're a really good band. I even like Lottie Dottie. I know it's kind of a divisive album with some people because it's a little by the numbers for them, but I thought it was at least fun. This has elements of that, but it also, I feel like, tries too hard to shift into more of an Anco-centric sound that I think could have worked had they doubled down on it without trying to conflict where their sounds were or aspects that conflicted with that ideology. There's just too much going on, and I feel like it leads to a mess. Giving this a 6. Yet again, another 6.
Bikinis and they rented hummus. The party's on, so they're heading down.
Something I won't be giving a 6 to, though, is the new Ed Sheeran collaborations project, number 6, because this isn't good. This is pretty not great. The collaborations projects are something of Ed Sheeran's catalog I'm not that familiar with, but I am familiar with him trying to dip his toes into hip-hop via the collaboration he did with Yelawolf years ago, which I reviewed on a blog that I used to run, and that had glimpses of a hip-hop Ed Sheeran more convincing than what's on here, at least in the tracks where he's doing hip-hop. This more feels just like a smorgasbord, sort of, it's a mad world type album featuring Ed Sheeran and who he could get in the studio with. There's a lot of different ideas in the mix here, and it's less about the flow and more about how people sound on what songs. And I'll be honest, Ed on the rap songs outside of Take Me Back to London, he doesn't sell. Eminem and 50 Cent on their song are fine. I think 50 actually outperforms Eminem on that song. Young Thug and J Hus are fun. I like that he's bringing in more British rappers onto something like this. I think Stormzy is the best out of that crop. I think on Take Me Back to London, which might be the strongest song on here, him and Ed actually work well together on that song. But I think the better instances on this album are the more R&B infused cuts. I like the song I Don't Want Your Money with Her. I love the song Put It All On Me with LMI. I think the two of them work really well together. And I think the opener Beautiful People works really well. Even though Khalid seems pretty utilized, his presence doesn't feel as strong. I think that song is okay. I think it's a decent cut. I think it's better than I Don't Care, which is the other really big single on here. I think that song has similar issues. Justin Bieber's on it, but I feel like he could have been used a little better. The song just kind of has this flaccid approach to it that is only made worse by its saturation on the radio. I used to not normally listen to the radio, but now that it's a little more integrated into my normal life, it is something I hate hearing on heavy rotation and hearing even just snippets of it. It's like, why is it still around? I think the album's also just really lengthy. I think you cut half the songs on here and you wouldn't be missing much. I think both the songs that are trying to have this Latin infusion don't really work. South of the Border and Nothing on You. I think the closer is weird. I think Ed, Bruno Mars, and Chris Stapleton don't have any chemistry together. I think on the instrumental, Chris Stapleton has the strongest presence, Bruno Mars over this rock swagger tune just doesn't work for me, and it really doesn't work for Ed. And the Travis Scott cut is pretty underwhelming as well. I think that Travis is one of the features where you can tell it's him, but he's not the strongest force on the song itself. And it just again bogs down the track listing with another just look who I got. That's this whole kind of shtick of this. I feel like this is more of a placeholder for what like a modern Maroon 5 record would be. You know, Adam Levine parading in pop stars and seeing who he can get on a song. This is going to be on the worst of the list, no doubt. I don't know how high, but we'll see by the end of the month. I'm giving this a 3. I really don't like this thing, and I hate that I spent time with it. But I did. I did it for you. Not Mixie, who's running around in the background, but for you, who's watching. Yeah. You know, when I was sitting down to sink my teeth into this album, I realized I've never talked about Coldplay on the channel. It's not that I hate Coldplay, but I don't know. I don't think my opinion on Coldplay is all that unique. I think they're fine. I'm one of those guys who makes the Radiohead jokes at their earlier stuff. But their earlier records are fine. They're nothing wrong. The stuff they put out this decade I don't think is nearly as good. And I think Everyday Life is a nice step in the right direction, but it also just kind of feels like another Coldplay post-Viva La Vida record where they're trying to do something that isn't Radiohead. And, I mean, it's fine. There's moments I do really like on here. I love the gospel stuff on Broken. I love the groove and instrumentation on Arabesque. I think that's a really fun, boisterous tune. I love the singles Church and Orphan. I think they're really good. I think the record kind of flounders out by the end. The whole middle section of the second disc is pretty underwhelming. There's mixing inconsistencies throughout the record, and I feel like there's a huge sonic imbalance of them trying to juggle this more rootsier side with some electronic pop stuff, and we don't know what we're doing with the sound. There's a lot of that on the record, and it isn't helped by the fact that it's a double album with seemingly two different kind of tones that don't sound too distinct from one another. I think one of the other better songs on here is Guns. I like that kind of short Chris Martin one-man interlude that has him kind of playing a character. I thought it was a better written song than some of the other stuff that's been on the recent records. This record, it's fine. It's nothing I would say is overtly offensive. It's not going to be on the end of the year list on either side. Again, if it's on the worst list, it's because I haven't listened to that much bad yet. There's a couple of contenders that I'm listening to out of morbid curiosity. But this record isn't offensive. I think you could do worse, but you could do much, much better. I don't know, I think it's a 5. It's fine. It's kind of mediocre. I think that the mixing inconsistencies and the lack of cohesion between ideas is what really sets this record back. There's nothing super offensive in its composition or its lyrics. If anything, its lyrics are trying to be more progressive and forward-thinking, and that's fine. But yeah, it's nothing special to write home about. It's one of the weaker Coldplay albums, but it's not their worst by any stretch of the imagination. So, the last album I'm going to be talking about is actually one I've been spinning for a lot longer than any of these other records. And that's the Highwomen, a record I keep seemingly put in the back of my mind to talk about and forget to do so. You guys know, country, not necessarily in my wheelhouse. That's more my girlfriend's shtick. I try to dip my hands into this pool every now and again, even though it wasn't a genre I grew up in, and it's one where a lot of contemporary acts just don't sit well with me. But I like this project a lot more than I have the other country acts I've talked about over recent years. Well, I liked the earnest writing and sort of attempts at resurrecting an older sound on her on Casey Musgraves' last record, and I really praise Sturgill Simpson for similar ideas, but I feel like he dipped too far into the kind of ideas and ideologies in country music that I don't really love to hear indulged that Lady Gaga did on Joanne. This strikes a harmonious balance. And I'm not just saying that because these 4 women have beautiful harmonies that showcase all throughout this record. But the production on here is so very indebted to like old 70s country in like a very pure way. It's very warm feeling. A lot of the guitars have this just warm sound to them that is so inviting and comforting. This album is a lot about empowerment. It's another kind of women are great album, and I'm all for stuff like that, especially if it's like this. I love a lot of this record. I think the songwriting is really strong, and again, it's earnest in a not annoying way. One of my biggest issues with country is the writing can sometimes lean into territories I don't care about when it comes to country. But a track like Loose Change is so simple but so relatable in a universal sense. But they do a good job at letting it not stray too far from the album's themes. You know, tracks like My Name Can't Be Mama and My Only Child feel an old soul, have this true sense of heart in their writing, and I love that. And again, the compositions on here, the arrangements, the playing is just very rootsy in the best way possible. You know, I would like country if more of it sounded like this in a contemporary sense. You know, I don't like a lot of contemporary acts because they just don't do it like this. I've heard that there's some that do, and I've been trying to get myself to ease into that pool, but if this is going to be my gateway, I'm happy this is it, because I adore this record. Again, probably not going to be at the top of my of the year list, but damn if I don't like it more than any other country music I've talked about on this channel. It's heartfelt, sincere, and it's beautiful. These women all know how to sing, and they work really, really well together. While I could see this being a really strong one-off, I wouldn't be upset if they did another album like 3 years later. This is getting an 8 out of 10. Strong recommendation for me. If you want an earnest, well-written, well-produced, rootsier-sounding country album, listen to the Highwomen. Very good. I know other people are praising it already. I'm just throwing my hat in the fire. This is a damn fine record. And I'm glad I spent some time with it, and I'm glad I remembered to actually talk about it this month. And those have been the albums I've checked out in the last month. What did you think of these albums? Do you like the albums that I talked about? Are you upset I gave an album that you like a lower rating? Do you think I should have rated something higher? Let me know. If you want to request an album for the end of the last month's listening log of 2019, be sure to do so in the comments down below. I'm going to be doing a lot of catch-up, getting as much requests as I can knocked out of the way. But if you got something, throw it up now, because if you don't, I'm not covering it unless I do like a special Patreon requested show. But yeah, requests, leave them down below. Questions, comments, concerns down there. If you like this video, be sure to like. If you want to see more of my music, gaming, and general nerdery content, be sure to subscribe. Special thanks to my patrons. If you would like to join their ranks, linked in the description is my Patreon. I'm going to get out of here. I've been Val Iraq. You guys are good days, lots of situations, and I'll see you another day.